Internet. We have another episode of Is It Good? And today we have Christopher Nolan's new movie, The Odyssey, based off of Homer's poems by the same name. Today I want to go over the movie in a bunch of different categories that I think will let me give a clear review of the movie, being my overall feelings, the story, the music, cinematography, lighting, props and visual effects, casting, and the acting from the cast, and my conclusions about the movie. So let's get into my first point, my overall thoughts, and is the movie good? And to answer that, yes, I think the movie is good. I think it is very good in a lot of aspects, but I also think that it's not one of Nolan's best films. Me personally, I wouldn't put it in my top three of Nolan's best films, but that's just my opinion. But I still would recommend going to see it. And my overall feel of the movie is that it's very grand and it does feel very epic, like Homer's Odyssey was supposed to be. And also, I think that it is a fair and good adaptation of the original story. And my review on Letterboxd that I made was aptly, if Homer could understand what a movie was and is, I think he would like the movie. So let's get into the story of Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. Also, fair warning, spoilers. So the story of the Odyssey is, well, Homer's Odyssey. It's one of the most famous and oldest poems in literature and media today and even today. So yeah, the movie essentially follows the story of the original poems pretty well with some slight differences in there, but also at the same time I don't think those differences were too major, except for maybe a couple scenes and a couple pieces of dialogue. So, as a quick recount of the story in both the movie and the poems, Odysseus is trying to get back from the Trojan War that was just recently won by the Greeks and getting Helen back. And in Christopher Nolan's movie, it starts with a bard about to sing and retell the different stories that people have heard about Odysseus and his travels. And in his travels, it essentially is Odysseus is trying to get home for about 10 years, that is also added on to the 10 years spent fighting in the Trojan War. And in his travels home, he encounters the Cyclops, the mystical witch Circe, the stranded island, paradise island of Calypso's, and then his eventual return and fighting off the suitors in Ithaca when he comes back home. So the next section I want to go over in my review is the music for the Odyssey. That's which is fantastic. It feels very apt for the setting and definitely for the adaptation of the poems. Ludwig Göransson specifically recreated and hired a bunch of musicians that knew how to play the ancient Greek instruments of what that period would be to make the soundtrack more intimate and better adapting the feeling of the poems. They use a bunch of old brass, old lutes, flutes, and other instruments that probably would have been found in ancient Greece at that time. And I think it enhances the story very, very well. I think it enhances all the scenes very, very well. And specifically, you'll notice that it's nothing like huge orchestral scores or pieces or songs, but it's like a soundtrack, kind of like for a video game or something. But it's a constant soundtrack that changes, that adapts, that like if you were to be sitting around a campfire and maybe there's a little bit of soft music that's being played to help enhance the different feelings of the characters in the story. And I think it's a super unique way in how Ludwig Göransson and Christopher Nolan has adapted the story. In this section, I want to talk about the cinematography and the camera work for the Odyssey. It's very, very well done. It's very grand in a lot of ways, where you see a lot of wide shots, you see a lot of long takes during battles and fight scenes, but there's also the wide shots that show the settings and also the ships on the ocean that feel very epic, feel like it feels like an adventure. But also at the same time, on the other end, there is plenty of scenes where it's very intimate, it's very close up, like you're another one of Odysseus' men on the journey, and especially in scenes like Circe's house or hut and the Cyclops' cave. It's very, very tight, very claustrophobic, and it also is great camera work to make you feel unnerved and scared of these mythological creatures and people. Another big part with the cinematography is the lighting of the movie, and the use of lighting in this movie is very well done. Overall, the look of the scenes is very visually appealing. No shot was too dark, nor was a shot too light or too much glare in it. You could see the characters perfectly, you could see the surroundings perfectly, unless it was done on purpose. Like, for example, on Calypso's island, the lighting is very bright. It's very dreamlike because it's supposed to kind of symbolize Odysseus's kind of mental brain fog of when he's on the island and the dreamlike paradise that Calypso's island is. Another example is Polyphemus's cave. It's dark, it's foreboding, and this purposely is very dark so you can't see what's going on to enhance the fear that the Cyclops brings as a mythological monster. In keeping with the talking about the monsters and the Cyclops, the props and visual effects of the movie are outstanding. The Cyclops was an actual like 20-foot tall model that which was fantastic to look at and felt super real and super scary, especially in the scene in the cave. Also, the Trojan horse looks very cool. It looks grand. It looks like a good adaptation of what I think the horse would have looked like. And the other pieces are the ships in the Odyssey. I believe supposed to be like sort of like Greek trimeres, probably not 100% historically accurate Greek trimeres, but they very much fit the setting and very much look very cool in the movie. Other pieces are the fortresses and the castles and the temples. The city of Troy looks very well done. Ithaca looks stunning. And it's also it should look stunning because Christopher Nolan did go to these actual places and shot a lot of these locations to make it feel more like the poems, like you're grounded into the poems and in ancient Greece. Also, props, makeup, set design, all very well done. So let's get into probably the most talked about thing about the movie, that being the casting. The casting, in my opinion, was very interesting. I think there was very interesting choices for casting. I think there was a lot of big names that might have not had to be in the movie. Uh, like Matt Damon playing Odysseus, he does a great job, but I don't know if he was needed to be Odysseus. But I will say probably the reason why they used like Matt Damon, Tom Holland, Anne Hathaway, Zendaya was to gather more hype for the movie, and they did their jobs. They did their jobs very well. But the casting I just thought was interesting, to say the least. And saying with the casting, the acting that they all did was very well done, bar from maybe one person that had a gripe with, that being Tom Holland's character of Telemachus. Telemachus? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how you say it. The son of Odysseus. In my opinion, I didn't feel Tom Holland's portrayal of Telemachus wasn't that gripping to me. It wasn't the most exciting performance he's done. It definitely serves its purpose of definitely moving the plot along, but I wouldn't say it's on the upper half of the acting that I saw in the movie. But I will say on the upper half of the movie was definitely Anne Hathaway as Penelope. You definitely feel the character of Penelope as she is struggling for almost 20 years of not seeing her husband, and Anne Hathaway does a great job in feeling that she is constantly grieving for wanting and pining for Odysseus to return in the hope that he can fix everything, just hoping that Odysseus is safe and he can get home. Matt Damon as Odysseus, he did a great job. His Odysseus fits with what the feelings of Odysseus was in the poem, where he had to make a lot of hard choices. A lot of characters say that he is the smartest, and a lot of times Odysseus is the smartest in the room, but also sometimes there's some choices that Odysseus does that's which I think are probably poor choices. And my guess is that it shows like man's hubris against the gods and Odysseus trying to defy the gods. And I think Matt Damon portrays that very well. I think one of the outstanding scenes that he does very well is the scenes when when he and his crew are crossing path with the sirens, and the absolute pain, the narration that he gives about how much pain that he feels when he listens to the siren song, and how much he longs for the happy ending that he wants. Also, shout out to Samantha Morton as Cersei and her very small role as Cersei, or like her small time as Cersei, being like super unhinged and super creepy. It's like honestly, it went the scene kind of went into like a little bit of body horror by how visceral it was, and Samantha Morton absolutely kills it as the witch, that being Cersei. And also, the other standout is Robert Pattinson. Even though he doesn't have the largest role, he is definitely probably the main villain of the story, just being that he wants to make sure that he can marry Penelope and gain the throne of Ithaca. And he feels slimy, he feels really dirty. And Robert Pattinson always does, especially recently. He has always put himself fully into the role, and it was a great role for him to play. Also, at the same time, there was a lot of other big actors. Like I think Jonathan Berthal was in there, but a lot of these bigger actors, big actors that we've heard, do have a lot of smaller scenes or smaller roles, and even some of them don't even have more than like 20 lines in the movie, but they all do a very good job and are memorable. Also, didn't expect Travis Scott to work in the movie. Uh, yeah, Travis Scott worked pretty well in the movie. So, in conclusion, my opinion of the movie is it's a very good movie. I would go watch it. I wouldn't. I would say the way I watch movies or the way I want to go into movies is I don't read that many reviews of movies because judge it. I want to judge it solely for myself. I mean, there'll be a couple of reviews here and there, just given how big the movie is. And mostly, I just want to hear if people like it or not, but I'll still go see it anyway. And I think having that mindset is a good mindset when going into a movie like this. People know it's big, people know that I think a lot of people are going to like it, and I think you should go see it too. If I were to give a rating, 8.5, that's what I would say for the movie. There's the last couple of things I want to note is that this is my second time watching the Odyssey. The first time I went was opening night, and I gotta say it was electric in the theater. And also at the same time, the crowd in the theater was very interesting. Um, it was very widespread. I saw everybody from teenagers, families, even older couples go see the movie, and I think that speaks volumes and what audience this movie wants to bring in. That being a lot of people who've read the story, and also a lot of people who want to experience the story in a new way and in a new adaptation. But I also want to make a future video deep diving into the movie's themes, the Greek mythology, the mythological history behind Homer's Odyssey, uh, historical accuracy, and overall the adaptation of the original poems, and what I liked about it and what I didn't like about it. So yeah, go watch the movie. I think you'll like it.